I got another story for you. This story was sent to me by a follower who had a creepy encounter in the woods of West Virginia. Which, if you didn't know, West Virginia is the only state completely covered with the Appalachian Mountains. Alright, let's get to the story. I grew up in rural West Virginia, and my grandparents owned my grandfather's old family farm. It was roughly about 120 acres of land inside of a valley. Only thing on this property was my great-great-grandparents' house. My grandpa would always tell me and my cousin all about all the Appalachian legends and stories that he had heard growing up. Now, while I loved hearing all the stories, my cousin was not a fan. Grandpa would always take us down there with him, and he would go hunting, or he was just there to make sure nobody was trespassing, because trespassing was a problem in the area. He was very laid back, but he only had 2 rules that we absolutely had to follow while we were there. Stay in eyesight of him, and never go past the grove of apple trees. He always told us if we went over there, we would be trespassing on somebody else's property. Until one day I found out that that was 100% not the reason that he wanted me to stay away from those apple trees. This day, me and my cousin decided to take our 4-wheelers and go riding on these trails that we had made. As we're riding through the trails, I catch a glimpse of something walking in the apple trees. It was walking straight towards my great-great-grandparents' house about 150 yards away. I immediately stopped, which made my cousin slam into the back of my 4-wheeler. He started yelling at me to watch out, but I told him to shut up and look at the old house. This house had always scared me and him anyways, just because of the looks of it. It was like run down, and you know, when you're a kid, that stuff's just creepy. We used to say that's where the boogeyman lived, and we'd always just stay away. I told my cousin it looked like our grandpa had just walked inside, because our grandpa was a rather big guy. He was like 6'5", 350 pounds. I decided to turn off the 4-wheeler, and for some reason I took off walking towards the apple trees. My cousin followed behind me because he didn't want to be left alone in the woods. As we're walking up the hill towards the apple trees, we hear a loud smack coming from inside the house. We both dropped down because we figured it was our grandpa bringing something out, and if he saw us, he'd paint our back porch red for us being out that far. As we lay there completely quiet, a large arm and hand comes out and grabs the frame of the house. We could hear the walking coming closer to the apple trees, so we just kept hiding. Once the footsteps stopped, we could hear like the rustling of tree branches and apples falling, hitting the ground. We both looked up and saw something that we at first thought was a bear. It was roughly 7.5 feet tall and covered in brown hair. Like I said, my first thought was a bear because we do have bears in that country. It was standing completely on 2 legs, just like a human, and it was using one hand to shake the tree branches and holding a bunch of apples in the other hand, at least 5 or 6 apples, but it could have held more. I was frozen in fear until all of a sudden my cousin took off running towards the 4-wheeler. When he took off, the creature dropped the tree branch and just turned and was staring right in our direction. I took off running too, and I was right on my cousin's tail as we made it to the 4-wheelers. We jumped on them and ripped out of there as quick as we could. Once we made it back to where Grandpa was, his face was beet red. It's like he knew something had happened. He told us to get in the truck now. So we did, and we took the longest ride home. He never once said a word about it back then. I'm almost 30 now, and about 8 months ago, he brought it up. I told him what I saw, and he told me that he told us to stay away from that area. He said that just because our family's name was on the title, that it didn't belong to our family. That part belonged to him. I've gone back many times since then, but I'll still never cross over and go to the apple groves again. Let me know y'all's thoughts on this story in the comments. Send any of your creepy and scary stories to my DM. I'm gonna keep going through them and picking ones to read.
He said, I'll never go hunting in those woods again. My name's Sydney. I grew up in the Appalachia region the first 21 years of my life, and I tell some pretty spooky stories. This is about a hunter and his experience that happened to him while he was in the Appalachian Mountains. It is very chilling, but he wanted me to share his experience with you. He wants to remain anonymous, so we will call him Brad. So Brad and his friend Mark had been lifelong friends, and they had been hunting since they were teenagers in the Appalachian Mountains. Brad said it was the first day of rifle season, so him and his friend got in the car, and this was very early hours of the morning, so it was still dark out, but they needed it to be dark so they could get to their tree stand without spooking any of the deer. Brad said he took the southern ridge where his old tree stand was bolted, and again, he had been hunting this land for a long time, so he knew where his tree stand was, and he knew the trail to get there. His friend took another direction to go down to a denser part of the forest, and then they agreed to meet back at the truck at a certain time. So he hiked up the familiar ridge, but then he noticed something was wrong. His tree stand was gone. Not broken, not fallen, not rotted. It was gone. Like the bolts were gone. No trace of his tree stand. There was also no scrape marks like an animal had got it. It was just the bare wood where the tree stand used to be. Started searching along the ridge trying to find like remnants or anything of his tree stand, and then he found this like faint game trail that led down the side of the woods. He said he didn't recognize this game trail, but he followed it expecting it to go down and it come out to like a creek. But when he got to the bottom, he found something very, very odd. It was like this little cluster of rundown shacks. very, very run down with like sagging roofs. The windows of these little shacks were like covered up with boards, and it was just so odd to him because he has never seen this before. And then as he got closer to the shacks, he noticed down in the mud footprints. He said that they were human footprints, and it was bare feet that kind of just circled around the cabin, some larger, some smaller. But then even more bizarre than that, he found some of the hardware for his deer stand. So that's when he really starts to become uneasy, and he calls out, "Hello, is anyone in there?" because he wants to know why they've taken down his tree stand. Nobody answers, so he gets a little bit closer to one of the front porches of the shack, and he sees an old plate and like some half-eaten food on the plate. So people have obviously been here, but he's not getting a response and he's not seeing anyone. So at this point, he's like, okay, I'm just gonna go. He turns to leave to go back up the trail from where he came, and he sees someone standing at the top of the ridge. Brad said it looked just like his friend Mark, but much taller and wearing different clothes. And then the person shouts at him and says, "Brad, why aren't you in your tree stand?" Brad knows this isn't Mark and starts to absolutely freak out and just slowly move away. He says he didn't lift his rifle or anything like that because this person wasn't like an imminent danger to him, but he felt so uneasy. He's just like, I've got to get the heck out of here. He doesn't run because that's one of the rules. He just slowly backs away and goes back up the game trail that he found. He's so terrified by this, he's like, I can't even hunt anymore. He goes back to the truck to wait for his friend, his real friend, Mark. Hours go by. Mark makes it back to the truck. He's killed no deer, but Brad tells him what happened to him. Mark did not believe him. Mark was like, you're making all of this up. You're seeing things, dude. Like, what is wrong with you? So Mark's like, okay, you know what? Tomorrow, during the daytime, we're going to go back down that trail and you're going to show me this weird, creepy cabin place that you found. They go back the next day. Hunting stand is still missing, the deer stand, but the game trail is gone and they can't find the cabins. So what do you think happened here? This story actually freaked me out. And for all those people who don't believe and say these are just made up spooky stories, why are there so many of them? Why are there so many experiences like this? And if you want to hear more spooky stories like this one, then just follow along.
Just when I thought I've heard it all, I get another awesome story. This story happened to one of my followers, and I'd love to know what you think. So 20 years ago, this woman was at home with her 6-year-old daughter and their dog, Kaylee. Her husband and her son were out on a hunting trip. She says that all of a sudden she got this really strong urge to go outside. She said she really didn't want to leave Kaylee's side because she'd been really sick lately, and she was a pretty old dog. But something was just pulling her to go outside. So she's outside doing chores, and her daughter comes out a little bit later, and she asks her daughter, how's the dog doing? Her daughter says, Mama, Kaylee's kind of floating in the air. So she says, okay, sweetie, and doesn't think much of it. Then a little while later, she goes in the house and she goes and checks on Kaylee, and she notices that she has actually passed away. She tries to call her husband, but again, he's out in the woods with no cell phone service. So her husband gets home and she runs to tell him. Everybody is extremely sad and distraught. They bury poor Kaylee, and another chapter is closed. So fast forward now 15 years. They're sitting around chatting about old times, and then Kaylee's passing comes up. And her husband starts going on about how he remembers when she died in his arms as he was walking her around in the living room. And she's like, no, you weren't there. You were out hunting with our son. She wants to add that she never told him about the urgency she felt to go outside, nor about their daughter saying that she saw Kaylee floating around in the air. He is just very adamant about, no, she took her last breath in my arms in the living room. And she is just like, he was not there. So she immediately calls their son to confirm that they were indeed out hunting the day that Kaylee passed, and he agreed, yes, they were out on their hunting trip. She says she feels like timelines were shifting or even merging together, and that her urgency to go outside was almost a way to sort of give him his last moments with Kaylee, almost like just a little bit of alone time that she wasn't allowed to see. That story gives me goosebumps. It's just kind of like the timelines overlapped or something, and that's why the daughter saw this dog floating in the air. Maybe it was him holding her and walking her around the living room, but not fully, not whole. This is definitely different than a lot of the other timeline ones I've heard. If you have your own creepy story time, don't forget to submit it to the email in my bio, and if you haven't yet, follow for more creepy story time.
I grew up in Appalachia for 26 years of my life. I'm from Mason County, West Virginia. That is where the origin story of the Mothman is. And so many people in this app kind of make the stories about Appalachia so far-fetched, but also underfetched. And I have so many weirder stories than these basic stories about a dark figure in a tree, or I heard a whistle, you better run to your house, or like a whatever the heck. I would say it's far scarier than what they lead on, and it's much more bizarre living in Appalachia, specifically West Virginia. For example, so how our property was set up growing up, we had my house and then a garage apartment, adjacent to the house, and that's where our family friend named Priscilla lived. She lived there for like 15 years. Both places, I would argue, are haunted, and I have so many stories about our physical house built in like the 80s. It was haunted. We heard shit. There was so many weird things that every family member just experienced. And then also Priscilla's garage apartment was also heavily haunted and would have weird shit going on too. But that's a different video. So my mom called over to Priscilla's house one night. I was like probably in like fifth or sixth grade, around that time. And my mom called over to Priscilla and was like, hey, let's go down to Mom's, which is my grandma's house. And her house is about like a 10-minute drive down to this place called Fraser's Bottom. And Priscilla's like, yeah, let's go. And I wanted to go with them because I like, those 7 o'clock, I think it was on a Friday or something like that. Like, it was like a weekend. We didn't have anything to do the next day. And my mom was like, okay, let's get on to Priscilla's. And so we loaded up the van, and, it's just a normal drive, it's just a normal drive. And we passed down on Old 35, which is this road. It's like a 2-lane road. It's super busy. At this point in time, it wasn't busy at all. And it was just us on the road. And we're driving, and all of a sudden, I was playing my DS. I think it was a Game Boy Advance SP at the time. It was a Game Boy Advance SP. And I was playing my Game Boy Advance SP at the time, and my mom screamed to like bloody fucking murder in the van, and Priscilla screamed too at the same time. I look up and I see this weird fucking creature with like a tail. Like the tail was like doing weird shit in the fucking air. This creature flew down on the road and like walked weird, and like its tail was flopping, its wings were like flopping, and then just jumped and flew the fuck off. I'm getting chills right now. I'm literally getting fucking chills. Like I legitimately reliving that. I am getting fucking chills. Like, can you see that? Like, those are fucking goosebumps. So shit like that would happen. It was not the size of the Mothman, and it's not the size of a crane. It wasn't just a regular bird. This thing was like humanoid, and it like flew down in front of us, walked on 2 legs, had arms and a tail and wings, and flew the fuck off. It fucking jumped. It power jumped and flew off. It's fucking weird. And then we drove to my grandma's in pure silence. We were like, what the fuck was that? And we get to my grandma's, we tell them about it, and they're just like, you all are full of shit. But it's like 3 people saw the same thing. And to this day, I still get chills thinking about that night or talking about the night. And this is the area where the Mothman is, seen. It's not the size of the Mothman. It's not the fucking Mothman. It's just not. And it's not a crane. Cranes don't have arms or a humanoid fucking head. It's weird. And I have weirder stories that still give me reactions to this day because, again, so many people in this app are getting Appalachia wrong.
I have another spooky story for you guys. This one was submitted by a family who's been having some strange experiences in their home, particularly in their basement. So they've set up a Ring camera and they caught something on film that they just can't explain. And yes, we have the videos. So let's just jump right into the story. When we bought our house, it came with an unfinished basement. From the very beginning, something about that space felt cold and unwelcoming. The air was always heavy, and even though it was just concrete floors and exposed beams, it gave me the creeps. It constantly felt like someone was watching me from the corners, so we mostly avoided going down there. But the basement made itself known even when we stayed upstairs. At night, we'd hear banging sounds rising up through the floorboards. Sometimes it even sounded like someone was jiggling the basement doorknob, like they were trying to get to the main floor. Eventually, we decided to renovate. I thought finishing the basement would make it feel normal. So we put in some new flooring, fresh drywall, better lighting, and even started storing some of our stuff downstairs. But the strange activity didn't stop. I'd go down to the basement and notice boxes were shifted from where we'd originally left them. Tools I swore I'd left on one side of the room would be across the basement the next day. And no matter how many times I set them upright, our potted plants kept getting knocked over. My initial assumption was that we had some sort of pest, like squirrels or raccoons. But I never saw any droppings or any specific evidence of animal activity. We finally decided to set up a ring camera in the basement. For 3 nights, nothing unusual showed up. But then on the 4th night, we caught something that I can't explain. We caught what looks like an orb drifting right across the frame. That morning, before I'd even checked the footage, I had already been down there and noticed that things were moved around again. Seeing the orb made it feel like we finally had proof that something was going on. The camera was aimed at the basement door and the windows, so I thought maybe the light was just coming from outside. But when we checked our outdoor security camera, which covers the entire yard, there was nothing. There was no movement, no headlights from cars, and no source of light at all. So far, these videos are the only instances we've caught on camera. And we haven't changed the camera's position in any way. Even after finishing the basement, after making it look fresh and livable, it still doesn't feel like it belongs to us. Without the noises and objects moving, I would have assumed what we caught on camera was just dust. But honestly, I'm not so sure. Now, I'll let you guys watch the videos and decide for yourselves. Just be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments. Don't forget to like and follow for more spooky stories. And now let's just get right into the footage.
This is the scariest haunted doll story that I've ever gotten. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and I have an email where anyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. And let me just say that these stories have gotten so scary that I've gone from reading them strictly at night to only during the daytime. And if I do have to read something at night, I will not read it in the dark. So let's get into it. The person who sent me this email says that since they were a little girl, they have been able to see and feel spirits. To the point where she would have her parents move her bed and her crib around the room because she felt like someone was in the closet. And it eventually got to the point where she refused to be in her room by herself. And when she was 6 or 7 years old, she was gifted a 4-foot porcelain doll for Christmas. And she specifically says that she immediately got a really, really bad feeling about the doll. And after being gifted this doll, she began to have issues sleeping again. And it was the same thing as before when she was a little girl. Like, there's someone in my closet, I feel like I'm being watched, I don't like it in here. And she continued to describe that she would put this doll in the corner of the room and wake up and it would be positioned closer to her. And she just thought it was someone pulling a prank on her in her home, so she just brushed it off and was like, okay, these people are trying to scare me because they know I don't like this thing. And it even went as far as her confronting her twin brother and her parents, and all of them were like, no, we don't touch it. Please stop freaking yourself out. Like, this is why you can't sleep in your room by yourself. And I guess after that conversation, she decided to walk up to the doll and say that I know what you are, and I know that you're evil. And this is where things get super scary. The doll begins to lean forward to the point where it falls on top of her, and she is literally unable to get it off of her. She's screaming to the point where her dad rushes in and picks this thing up off of her and is like, how did that happen? And she begins to describe, like, I said it was evil and it fell on top of me and I couldn't get it off of me and blah, 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 blah. And the dad, right then and there, just rips the doll apart. And what I'm imagining in my head is, like, literally dismembering the doll. Like, took the head off, took the arms off, took the legs off, etc. Goes out to the garbage can, throws it away, and is like, yeah, we're done with that. I don't like that it's tormenting you. I don't like that it's tormenting our family, etc., etc. They all wake up the next morning, open the door, and the doll is laying there at the front door. And everyone begins to freak out. And it immediately turns into a blame game. And at this point, her parents start fighting about who got it out of the garbage and who put it back together to scare their daughter. And she never really describes what happened to the doll after that. I'm assuming it just got thrown out. But the girl who sent me this email starts to experience sleep paralysis shortly after they got rid of the doll. They also begin to experience other paranormal happenings, like the doors opening and shutting by themselves. You know the gist. And a couple months ago, they decided to move out of this house. And one day, out of the blue, one of the women who was helping them move out just abruptly said, I am not helping you anymore. There's something weird going on in this house. I don't like it. And when the family was like, what do you mean there's something weird going on in the house? The woman helping them literally said, I hear your husband's voice call out to me all of the time, and he is not here. And what's really, really strange is the girl who sent me this email specifically says that her dad was in another city for work at the time while they were packing up to move. And the woman who was helping them says that he would call out to her repeatedly, and when she would call back to him, he wouldn't respond. And if you've been here a long time, then you know I do not like dolls like this. I don't like any dolls. They freak me out, and it's for this specific reason. And this is also not the first time I've heard of a doll coming from somewhere and being gifted to somebody that has some weird energy, and then some weird paranormal stuff happens. The entity of a doll haunted my boyfriend for a long time, and it was just... But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for my ghost stories.
If it is nighttime, do not watch this video, especially if you live in Aldine, Houston, Texas. This story was submitted by a TikTok user named Jennifer. I'm actually going to insert a picture of the house in question. These events take place about 15 to 20 years ago at her father's house. So Jen and her husband at the time were babysitting her two younger brothers, about 4 and 8 years old. They slept in bunk beds, but the 4-year-old at the time wasn't able to get down from the bunk bed without some help. Everything is going great. The two kids are up on the top bunk and they're watching TV, and eventually they fall asleep. Jen and her husband at the time decide that they're going to go to the living room just to kind of chill and watch TV. A couple hours into watching TV, Jen notices that the 4-year-old is in the corner of the hallway and he's got his head down and he kind of looks a little bit sad. So naturally, she's like, hey, sweetie, what's wrong? Are you okay? Her husband at the time looks at her and then looks at the hallway and then looks at her and is like, who are you talking to? Jen looks at her husband and is like, I'm talking to Jesse. But when she looks back, he's no longer there. At this point, the two of them are puzzled, and she's like, no, I swear he was just standing there. So the two of them, really believing that Jen had just seen Jesse, decide to get up and go check on the kids. And all the while they're thinking, like, how did he get down from the bunk bed? So they go to the kids' room, they kind of peek over that top bunk, and they notice that both of the kids are asleep. And they're sleeping good, like they're knocked out. The two of them are really confused at this point, and in her head, Jen is thinking like, well, I know what I saw. So they quietly back out of the room and shut the door and then go sit back down in the living room. As Jen and her husband are sitting in the living room, they're kind of talking like, well, maybe he got up and then he just went back to sleep. But they're still like, well, how did he get out of the bunk bed? So they turn off the TV and they're kind of sitting there trying to make sense of what just happened. So as they're sitting there trying to understand what is happening, they hear a little boy giggle. But this time, both of them hear it. So they're looking at each other like, okay, no, the kids are definitely up now. They get up, they go back to the kids' room, they kind of peek over that top bunk, and again, the kids are dead asleep. So again, they slowly back out of the room, they shut the door, and they go back to the living room. So as they're in the living room, her husband's like, okay, are you absolutely sure it was Jesse that you saw? And she's like, well, I think it was him, but I didn't see his face. His head was down, and he was wearing the blue pajamas with the collar. So for the rest of the night, they just kind of sat in the living room and just kind of kept an eye out for anything else that would happen. Now, I do want to mention that this house is allegedly haunted. In a completely separate incident, that same little boy, Jesse, came running up to his big sister, Jennifer, to say, hey, there's someone knocking at the door. Now, at the same time, Jennifer didn't hear anyone ring the doorbell or knock at the door. And their door also had one of those burglar gates on it, so you would have to open that gate in order to knock. But Jennifer goes to the door anyways, and there's no one there. But Jesse would swear up and down, like, no, he was there. He was pointing and laughing at me. So this house had a lot of weird paranormal activity. Some examples would be like the curtain would move, the doors would rattle, they would hear people talking. But this next event would be a little bit more eerie. So Jennifer, her husband at the time, Jennifer's dad, and Jennifer's stepmom were all in the living room. Everything is normal until they see a black figure walk into their grandmother's room. So 3 of 4 people saw this figure walk into their grandmother's room. And they're so convinced that somebody is in grandma's room that Jennifer's ex-husband actually goes in to check it out. And when he gets in there, it's freezing cold. Mind you, this is Houston, Texas. Your AC does not get that cold in the summer. That being said, he goes in there, he looks around, and no one's in there. So they just kind of forget about it and it's whatever. A week after everybody sees this shadow figure walk into their grandma's bedroom, Jennifer and her ex-husband are outside and they see an owl. More specifically, la lechuza. Now, if you don't know what that is, the shortest way I know how to explain it is like brujeria meets like native folklore. You can think of it like a mystical owl that is a bad omen. And according to tradition, when you see this owl or hear it scream, somebody dies. Well, Jennifer and her husband at the time see this owl and it whistles at them. Like the sound from La Lechuza was not a typical owl noise. And 2 days later, their grandma actually passes away. That's all I have for this video. If you like spooky content, you can follow me if you want. If not, stay safe.
Girl, what do you mean? It was absolutely suspenseful. This was a thriller at best. This was horrific. Faceless lady in the Texas graveyard. I'm nervous even typing this. Like it's wrong to talk about it, but I need answers. You can call me Ember. I used to live in a small town in Texas. I don't know if it's connected to this, but I lost a brother a few years before this, and I saw him that night after begging to see him for one more time because I felt like I would die if I couldn't. He came to say goodbye. This might seem like something random to mention, but part of me wonders if I opened a door that I shouldn't have that night with my begging, a door that should have stayed closed. My parents still live in that little town today, and so does my brother and his wife. But I just can't go back because of what happened this night. There's this little man-made historical graveyard in the town I had been investigating for years, just for fun. I'm not a pro or anything, but I've done enough of these at graveyards and other places that I don't scare easily. Usually it's just quiet nights and cold spots, maybe a glimpse of something, but nothing serious. The place isn't big, only a few graves and some trees scattered around. No fence, it's pretty open and surrounded by bushes and trees and just empty fields. 2 little houses in the back that belong to the family that take care of the graveyard. I'd been there a bunch of times, both night and day. Like I said, I'd been coming to the graveyard for years and I know every headstone by heart. That night, I'd been out there for a while already, maybe a good 30 minutes, maybe longer. Everything was calm, nothing weird, although to be honest, from the time I got there, something just didn't feel right. But I ignored it and continued my investigation. Always listen to that little voice. Oh, girl, always listen. I was walking through towards the back, towards the houses again, when I noticed her just standing near one of the trees. It threw me off because I hadn't seen her before and I would have noticed someone else walking around. It's open enough that you can see the whole place from pretty much anywhere, but she was just suddenly there, and she popped up out of nowhere. And the air, I don't really know how to describe it, but it changed. It no longer felt safe. The slight breeze that had been happening that night just stopped, like the wind itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen. She had on blue jeans and a blue hoodie. The descriptions, whoo! One of the houses had a light on the outside, and it was hitting her from behind, so she was outlined in light, but her front was dark. I couldn't see her face at all. I remember feeling ridiculous because I immediately felt afraid. I noticed that suddenly everything had gone quiet, and even the crickets were going off earlier had suddenly stopped. Mind you, I had been investigating haunted places by myself and with others for years and had never been this afraid, but something about her just felt off. But where I come from, when you show up to investigate somewhere and someone else is already there, it's just common courtesy to say hi, let them know you're around so you don't mess with their investigation or accidentally scare them. So I did. I put my feelings aside, convinced myself I was being ridiculous, and decided to talk to her. I said, hey, but I didn't get a response, so I tried again. I said, hey, sorry if I distracted you. I didn't know anyone else was here. Do you live in this small town? which I knew she didn't because it's a small town. Even if you don't know everyone personally, you get used to seeing people around and you know when you see someone if they live there or not. But I was just trying to get her to talk to me. And I kept talking to her, trying to be polite. I don't even remember the rest of what I said, but she wasn't answering. Still nothing. No sound, no movement, just standing there. And the longer she was quiet, the more tense the air of the graveyard felt, so I started walking a little bit backward, the way I had come. I have never really felt that fear and unease, and I've been through a lot in my life by then, unfortunately, but I had never felt such a feeling of instinctual level of fear. Then I realized that the way she was holding herself didn't seem normal. Don't get me wrong, she was standing there like a normal person, but she was tense. Unlike the way most people stand relaxed, it was like she was ready to pounce on something. And that's when she took one slow step towards me. My gut immediately went cold, like my brain hadn't caught up yet, but something in me knew it was off. I took an immediate step back, and for a couple seconds we both just stood there. Until it happened again. She stepped forward, I stepped back, and the only way I can describe it was the feeling of being prey. I shined my flashlight at her and finally saw her face, or where her face should have been. And there was nothing, just smooth skin, completely blank, with like places where eyes and a nose and mouth should have been, but there was nothing there. And then she started moving fast, like running straight at me, and I took off. I've never run that fast in my life. And something almost I forgot to mention. The ground of the cemetery is extremely uneven. It's not a flat surface. So I was tripping and falling everywhere, trying to get away, but I never heard her fall once. I could hear her footsteps behind me getting closer every time I looked back until I got to my house. I reached my porch and turned around, and she was gone. Just the trees, the neighbors' houses, and the empty streets. The stillness and the quiet was still there. I stood there shaking, trying to catch my breath because I've been doing this kind of thing for years and nothing has ever scared me like that woman did. I somehow gathered up my courage and went back the next morning in daylight. Everything looked normal again, but it still didn't feel right. The air felt heavier though, and the same uneasy stillness was still waiting there. I haven't gone back since that day. I actually moved away a few months afterwards. I don't go looking for ghosts anymore, and maybe that was a sign that something or someone didn't want me doing it in general. It all happened in under 2 hours, and I'm sorry that it's not very exciting or suspenseful like some other experiences are, but it happened this way, and I wanted to stay true to the facts. Girl, what do you mean? It was absolutely suspenseful. This was a thriller at best. This was horrific. First of all, the detail was spectacular, amazing, delicious. I loved it. Ate that shit up. Loved reading this out loud. I could just feel like you get tense knowing what's coming, you know? Thank you so much for sending this in to me. OP did let me know that they sent this in to quite a few other scary, spooky story ghost tellers. I received this, I think, on like Friday or Saturday, so it is jumping the line, and I'm so sorry, but I did see the first few sentences where they said they sent it in, so I just wanted to try to get it out there as fast as I could, if you know what I mean. Now, with that being said, this was absolutely amazing writing. You should be a writer for sure. This was fantastic. The detail, it was like I was there experiencing it with you. Like, I felt tense just reading it. I could feel the despair, and the way that you were describing how fearful you were made me want to look around and just make sure that the sun was still out for a second. Absolutely horrific. This is probably one of my favorite stories. I have a lot of favorite stories, so please do not let that get to your head. I'm just saying I love this story. It was very well written. It was very descriptive. It made me shudder a little bit, made my eyes wince. It made me a little anxious, I'm not gonna lie to you. Absolutely wonderful. Loved this. I think that it's super scary. I have no idea what that was. The fact that she had no face, I feel like says a lot. More specifically because things that want to be known would not show up as being faceless. I almost feel like she's a soul that's trapped there and shouldn't be. Maybe she was buried under someone else's grave and nobody knew. It kind of sounds like she's wearing what she was wearing when she died, and it sounds like a lot more modern than what the graveyard is. So maybe somebody buried another body there and just
expected nobody to know, and for some reason you were able to see her. Love this story. You guys let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please do not forget about the giveaway. Please go over to my Instagram. It is Scary Spooky Ghost Stories, and enter the giveaway. It is not a lot, but it is a cute little giveaway box, and there's going to be some cutie stuff in there. Stuff from Spirit. We've got ghosts, we've got bats, we've got witchy stuff, we've got books, lots of goodies. I love you guys, and I hope you have the best day ever. Happy frickin' Halloween. I know it's not Halloween yet, but I'm so excited. Oh yeah, bye.
The next time someone tells you that something supernatural can't cause you harm, I'm going to need you to redirect them to the case that we are going to be talking about today. Because this is the one and only one of its kind where something supernatural was blamed for the loss of a man's life. So come with me on a little adventure while I tell you all about the Bell Witch of Tennessee while we travel through the cave that she is said to live in on that property. And you may want to turn on a light for this one because, look at the screen, you're there with me. So the story begins back in the early 1800s when John and Lucy Bell would purchase over 200 acres of farmland in a small town outside of Nashville, Tennessee. The town is known as Adams, and it is very small, like population 600 small. So John and Lucy moved their entire family there, and they lived completely peacefully for about 13 years, but, if it stayed that way, we probably wouldn't be talking right now. The chaos would begin on one day in 1817 when John would see a peculiar-looking creature in the middle of one of their fields. He described it to have the head of a dog but the body of a rabbit. It looked like the two creatures morphed together perfectly and just shared features. Even after being struck with several bullets, that animal or creature showed no sign of being impacted at all and vanished right in front of John. And spoiler alert, he would not be the only one to see a weird-looking creature on the property. But that night, the family would begin to hear sounds from inside of the house. It was like this beating on the wall that would become even more loud and frequently as time went on. Yeah, that never stopped. Every time it happened, John and his sons would rush outside to try and catch whatever was doing it, but there was nothing there ever. A constant tap on the wall is annoying, but it's probably something the family could have dealt with, but things didn't just stay to that, and in fact they switched to a more physical side pretty soon. At night, the children would have their blankets completely ripped off of their bodies and their pillows ripped out from underneath their heads and just thrown into the floor. And then family members would start getting smacked, they would get pinched. Everything was happening to them by something they couldn't see. One of the daughters named Betsy seemed to be getting it the most. She would have bruises, scratches, everything. It just seemed to be really singling her out. And then the family started hearing a faint voice that would start growing, and this voice would sing hymns, it would recite church sermons from that sermon that they went to that day. It would do all kinds of things, but it would also claim the name of Kate. Now this is very important because Kate was a very real living, breathing person. She was the neighbor of the Bells family, and she did not get along with the family, especially John. Her and John got into it a lot over land disputes. They had a whole weird thing going on. They just did not get along. And everyone in the town was kind of weird towards Kate. She was eccentric, she was outspoken, and in that time, you really couldn't be like that as a woman. So what did the town do? They called her a witch. But if you ask me, Kate was not involved, at least not on purpose, and she certainly was not the Bell Witch. But that is not what you came here for. You didn't come here for my opinions, and I will go on a rant that will take a long time. So let's get back to the story. The family was keeping this a pretty big secret, and they soon started to realize that they didn't want to suffer alone, so they started telling family friends. Now, of course, these family friends were skeptical, but they would come over, spend a night, and experience every single thing that this family was experiencing. The singing of hymns, the prayers, the getting pinched, the blankets being ripped off of them. It was happening to everyone. Which kind of surprises me because usually with negative entities, they will try to isolate. So they would want you to feel even worse by thinking you're having a mental health crisis and you're just experiencing this and no one else is. So the fact that it was doing it to other people is kind of interesting. This continued happening, but we're going to skip ahead for 2 years when President Andrew Jackson got involved. He heard about the haunting. One of the sons actually served with him, and he wanted to go see what was going on this farm. He was from not too far away. So he got in his horse and carriages with his men that came with him, and it's said that the horses literally stopped right at the property line. It was as if they were actually stuck, or the wagon was too heavy, they couldn't move it.
But then they heard a woman's voice telling them they could proceed, and the horses moved as if there was no problem before. From what I heard, the men didn't have too pleasant of a visit, but I don't really know what they expected when one of the men claimed that he was a witch tamer and tried to pretend that he could tame and get the Bell Witch to do what he wants. Like, what did they expect was going to happen? Of course, they had a bad time. Do you remember how I said all of the energy was shifted onto Betsy and she got it the worst? Well, after she broke off her engagement with the man, that energy shifted to John, and John got sick. John got so sick that he eventually could not leave the house and actually passed away. And when he did, the Bell Witch, with her voice, would take credit for poisoning him. She would leave after that and return back and forth a few times. So, what do we think? Did she still return now? Did she never leave? What do you think the Bell Witch is? Because it sure wasn't Kate.
Today's video is going to be about a haunted house, but maybe possibly also about a doppelganger. These are the earrings I'm wearing today. They say call me. I got sent these to my PO box by Clarissa, I believe her name is. If she has a store, I will put it in the comment section so you guys can go check it out. So there are 3 sisters, and just so that I don't get confused throughout the video and don't confuse you, there's going to be the oldest sister, which is a married sister, the middle sister, and the youngest sister. I don't even want to put names because I will confuse the fuck out of all of us. So again, there are 3 sisters, and the oldest sister gets married and she actually moves outside of the country where she grew up in. The 3 sisters always got along really well, and it had been a long time since they had seen their older sister because she moved away. So they made a plan to work really hard, get a lot of money so that they can make a trip to go and see their sister. The 2 sisters that stayed in the hometown, they weren't rich, they didn't have a lot of money, so they knew that they were gonna have to work really hard to save up all the money that they could to make this trip. So the middle sister actually makes her goal and saved up the money that she needed to travel, but unfortunately the youngest sister didn't make enough money. Because of this, the younger sister said that she didn't want to hold the middle sister behind, and she's like, no, you go, you take the trip, because I'm calculating how much I can save and I'm not going to be ready to go for another 8 months, so I don't want to hold you back. You go and visit her and I'll visit her at another time by myself. So the older sister, when she ended up moving, she moved to a very, very rich area where the houses are very big. However, the houses are also really old. So she got married to a man who was really rich. He has a really nice job and she's very comfortable where she's living. However, she had been warned by the neighbors when she moved in there that her house is haunted. When they were warned about this house being haunted, they didn't even have a conversation about it. They were not believers in paranormal, they're skeptics, and honestly, they had been living in that house for a while now and nothing has happened to them. So now we're at the point where the middle sister has made the trip and has got into the country where they're living in. The middle sister gets to the airport and she calls her older sister, the married one, and she's like, hey, I'm already here, are you gonna pick me up? When her older sister answers the married one, she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, we're gonna have to stay late for work. She works at the same place that her husband does now, and they were both gonna have to stay late. She tells her sister, I am so sorry, but can you try to get a taxi to where we live, and there's a key underneath the doormat, and just go ahead and let yourself in. She lived in a really safe neighborhood. She also told her, hey, I'm gonna tell my neighbors about you so that they're not concerned if they see somebody going into the house, but do me a favor and send me a picture of yourself right now so that I could send it to them. That way when they see you, they know that you're my sister and you're just going in the home. So the middle sister does end up taking that picture, sends it to the older sister, gets a taxi, she goes to the older sister's home, finds the key, and she makes her way into the house. So when she gets inside of the house, she ends up just sitting down in the living room, and the living room area is really big to the point where if you look up, you could see like the second floor kind of balcony there where she can see all the doors that lead up to different bedrooms. So as she's sitting on the couch and looking up at the balcony, she sees like a main door where she believes is her sister and her brother-in-law's bedroom. But when she's looking at it, she's seeing that there is like this white dress that's almost like moving with the wind. She can only see like the bottom of the dress because again she's looking up, but she could see where this like white dress is just moving into the door and like outside of the door. So as she's watching this, she's like talking to herself and she's like, that is so weird that my sister, I'm pretty sure my sister has like a washer and dryer room. I don't know why she would hang like a white dress there to dry when she could have easily taken care of it in the washer and dryer room. So she thought it was weird. She's like, my sister has this big ass house and she puts a dress there to dry in the middle of the hallway. She's also thinking to herself, my sister has this house so organized, so clean, and for her to leave a dress up there is just out of the norm for her. But she's like, well, maybe she was in a rush and she just left it there. Like, I don't know what's going on, I don't want to judge her, but that just seemed really strange to her. So she's still there trying to kill time, so she watches TV. She even takes a little nap, and when she wakes up, it's already nighttime, so she goes to the kitchen, gets a snack, and as she's walking back to the living room, she's thinking, oh my gosh, I should text my sister so she could tell me where I'm gonna sleep in. You know, there's different bedrooms. She doesn't know where she's gonna sleep, and she doesn't want to wait too long because she did have a long trip to get there, so she would like to know where she's gonna sleep so that she can just go ahead and go to bed. But if her sister didn't answer, she had just made a plan to go ahead and sleep on the couch. So that's exactly what she was doing. She was about to text her sister, she was about to call her, when out of nowhere, the TV in the living room just turns off. When she turns to look at the TV, because obviously it just turned off by itself, with the reflection of the TV, she sees herself sitting on the couch, but behind her, she sees a lady in a white dress and her face really pale white. The moment where she saw this lady behind her in all white, she stayed frozen. She was so scared. She felt like her heart was gonna come out of her chest, and she doesn't know how she grew the courage, but she managed to start turning her head around to see this lady that was behind her. And when she does this, there is nobody there. She immediately gets up, walks out of the house because there's no way in hell that she was gonna stay in there. She explains that when she walked out, she started to think about it, and she realized that that dress that she had seen when she first walked in her sister's house is the same dress that this lady was wearing. So as she's sitting in the front steps of her sister's house, she does not want to go back inside. She's starting to hear weird sounds. She's starting to hear somebody walk up and down the stairs inside, like a lot of movement going on in the house. She's obviously terrified, and she is texting her sister the entire time. She's unsure if her sister got the text or not because she's not responding, and it had been a long time. It was so long to the point where she ended up falling asleep on the stairs of her sister's house. She again is asleep, and she gets woken up because a man is like, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? As it turns out, the man who was asking if she's okay is her sister's neighbor. He had seen her just laying there on the stairs, and he thought that maybe she needed help or it was like a medical emergency. She obviously apologized to him. She's like, no, I'm okay. I'm just waiting for my sister. He explains to her that he is the neighbor of her sister and asked if she wanted to come to his house and that she could text her sister and tell her that she'll be at his house until she gets home. She obviously does not want to go to a random guy's house. Yes, it was her sister's neighbor, but she wouldn't want to go to his house. But she was so terrified that she was like, yes, I want to come home with you. Once they get into the neighbor's house, she realizes that he is married and has 2 daughters, so she felt a lot more comfortable going inside the house. They all offered her dinner and she sat down to eat with them, and then just out of nowhere, like straightforward, the husband and the wife look at her and say, they scared you, didn't they? And she was embarrassed to say like, oh yeah, they fucking scared me. So she was like, no, I'm just there waiting for my sister. And the neighbors were like, yeah, we know who you are. Your sister sent us a picture of you and told us that you were gonna go to her house, but she also told us that the keys were underneath the mat. So we're not sure why you were outside other than maybe they scared you. She didn't want to lie to them, and she was so freaking embarrassed. So after they asked her for the second time, they scared you, didn't they? She just nodded yes. The neighbors were then like, oh my gosh, what did you see? What did you see? Tell us. So she ends up telling them, I saw this lady in a white dress. And the neighbor's wife was like, the one that's really pale with the dark hair. And she got goosebumps when the neighbor described what she had already seen. And she's like, yeah, that's who I saw. Have you seen her before? And the neighbor's wife tells her, sometimes she peeks out of the window and we see her. Well, bitch, I got goosebumps now too, because what do you mean she peeks out to your house? The neighbors are not safe either. They explained to her that we don't know who she is. We just know that that house is haunted, and we warned your sister that the house was haunted. We have no idea how your sister and her husband can live comfortably there because that house is really haunted. We see that lady a lot. She is like scared. She is nervous because, by the way, this is like half a day for her. She is planning to stay there for 10 days with her sister and her sister's husband. She explained how when she finally went back to her sister's house and her sister's there, she couldn't sleep in that house anymore. It felt like those 10 days felt like an eternity to her. She could not go to sleep. She would hear noises. She would hear people going up and down the stairs, and she would tell her sister and her brother-in-law, and they would say that they didn't hear anything, that there was nothing in that house. She started to think that there was either one or two things. One, they would act dumb and not hear anything, or two, maybe this thing would only appear to certain people. And unfortunately, one of those people was her. She explains how, 10 days passed, she was finally gonna fly back home. It has been 4 years and she never went back to visit her sister again. But of course, the story does not end here. Within those 4 years that she had not returned back to the older sister's house, the little sister had saved up the money and it was her turn to go and visit. She explains how her little sister was like, hey, do you want to come with me? I know you have the money to come and we can go together now. And she's like, fuck no, I'm not going back to that house. She tells her, no, I'm not going. I will visit them when they move from that house. Let me know when they move and they will see me again. When the little sister returns from her visit, she tells her that she is terrified because something happened to the brother-in-law. Not necessarily to her, but something happened to the brother-in-law that terrified her. And she explains that after it happened to him, he was then like, oh, it was nothing. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe, let me tell you what the fuck happened that he thought he hallucinated. So little sister is in the married couple's house waiting for them because they had gone to work. They both got in the house at the same time, but the sister walks in first and goes straight into the kitchen. Seconds later, the brother-in-law walks in with boxes and starts heading towards the upstairs in the bedroom. However, as he's walking up, he is saying, I'm just gonna put a name to the older sister. Let's call her Melissa. So he's walking up the stairs with the boxes and he's saying, Melissa, where do you want me to put these boxes? Melissa, where do you want these boxes? Do you want me to take them to the room? Hello? They're finally up the stairs. They're in the hallway and he's still talking and talking. He's like, Melissa this, Melissa that. It got to the point where she hears and say, hello, Melissa, pay attention to me. This is not cool. Stop ignoring me. Where do you want me to leave the boxes? He ends up walking all the way to the bedroom, goes in there and then turns around. And Melissa, older sister, his wife, is behind him with 2 cups of water saying, what are you going on about? Who are you talking to? When the brother-in-law sees that his wife is actually behind him with the waters, he just stayed frozen. And she goes, what are you going on about? I went to the kitchen to get us cups of water. What's happening? When he finally says something to her, he tells her, didn't you just walk into our bedroom? And again, she's like, no, I was just in the kitchen. I was getting us cups of water. And he's like, oh, okay, no, I thought I saw something. It was just my imagination. It was nothing. What was nothing? That you were talking to someone who you thought was your wife, saw her go into your bedroom. When you went in there was nobody, and then your wife just pops up behind you. I would have peed myself in that moment because what the fuck do you mean? So the girl saying the story says that she feels in her bones 100% that he saw his wife's doppelganger, but he just played it off. He didn't want to make it a conversation because again, they're skeptics. He was like, no, it's just me. I'm crazy. Maybe I worked a lot. Maybe I just saw her in front of me. The entire time you were going up the stairs through the hallway in the bedroom, that's too long of a time for a hallucination, in my opinion. Now, she also believes that something happened to the little sister because the little sister, after that trip, also did not want to go back. She thinks that there's something else that happened that the little sister is not telling them, because if this happened to the brother-in-law and nothing necessarily happened to her when she was there, why is she so scared to go back? But she just feels like there's something that they're holding from her. She doesn't know what it is. She can't get it out of her sister, but apparently she thinks that something else happened because they have not gone back to visit that older sister. And honestly, I wouldn't either. I'm gonna go ahead and wait till you move to another house because that's crazy. A whole white dressed lady and a doppelganger. Can you imagine? If I go back, I don't even know I'm really gonna talk to my sister or my brother-in-law. What if it's somebody else and I'm there talking to them? Anyway, what do you guys think?
This is the craziest Appalachian story I have ever heard. So Casey grew up in the Appalachian Mountains and she was always taught, if you see it, no you didn't. If you hear it, no you didn't. So one day when she was 17 years old, her and her cousin Lexi finally convinced their parents to go camping with each other. Now Lexi had invited her other friend, but she said that she couldn't make it. So they are like, all right, whatever. So they pack everything up and they start driving to the woods. Now Lacey and Lexi had been camping before. This is not their first time and nothing suspicious had ever happened before. So they weren't really worried about it. So nothing happens the first night. Well, the second night she's sleeping while she's laying in bed and she hears footsteps around the tent. Now she's hearing it, but she's not thinking anything of it. She kind of just was like, okay, I'm going to ignore it. So she slept through it. Same thing on the second night. Same thing on the third night. But on the fourth night, something happened. She starts to hear the footsteps again, right? But she's like, okay, maybe it's my cousin. So she looks next to her. Her cousin is right next to her. It's not her cousin. Now this is not the time to be going outside because around there, this is like the witching hour, she said. So she looks outside of the tent and she sees this shadow and she's thinking that must just be a trick of the mind. I'm just seeing things. She's obviously not checking because she doesn't want this to turn out like a horror movie. So she's like, okay, I'm just going to put the blankets over my face and I'm going to go back to sleep. But then she starts to hear this clanking sound and she's like, what is that? Because nothing in their vicinity would make that clanking sound. Everything that they had put away in a separate tent. So she's just repeating in her head over and over again. If you see it, no, you didn't. If you hear it, no, you didn't. But then the clanking is getting louder and louder, like more deliberate, almost like this thing wanted her to open the tent and look at it. But she's like, there's no way I'm doing that. So she just closes her eyes really, really tight until she hears a faint Lacey. And it sounded just like her cousin, but something inside of her was like, that is not my cousin. And if she needs me, she will wake me up. Plus, she's laying right next to her. So she ignores it until the calm Lacey turns into this loud, panicking, almost screeching sound. But whatever this is still saying Lacey. It's just screeching it. Now, she said the way that this sounded was really weird because it sounded loud to her, but she almost knew it wasn't loud, almost like it was in her head, but it was clear as day to her, if that makes sense. So with her eyes still closed because she's absolutely terrified at this point, she like somewhat turns to her cousin and she pats like where her sleeping bag is to see if she's there, and sure enough, her cousin is there. So now she's super freaked out and she's repeating the phrase in her head over and over again. If you see it, no you didn't. If you hear it, no you didn't. Well, it eventually faded and it was silent once again, so she falls asleep. But then she wakes up to her cousin staring at her. So Lacey kind of like sits up because she's like, what's going on? What's wrong? And her cousin is just acting like everything is fine, like everything is normal. So Lacey just kind of shrugs it off and is like, maybe she's trying to scare me. I guess her and her cousin like scared each other a lot. And so she was like, she didn't get me this time. Like, I'm just going back to sleep. The next day goes on as normal. They have a good time and she chooses not to say anything because she doesn't want to bring it into existence until later on that night they start telling each other horror stories. So her cousin's telling a story when suddenly her voice lowers and she's like, did you hear that last night? And she froze because she thought that she was asleep. In fact, she knew that she was asleep. She felt her body not moving. She could hear her like shallow breathing and she just knew she was asleep. So she's like, well, I thought you were asleep. What did you hear? And her cousin's like, I heard wind chimes and like drumming, almost like there was a ritual being performed. And she said, like, I think I was dreaming, but it didn't feel like a dream. I mean, I was wide awake, but I couldn't move my body. So was it sleep paralysis? She said she had absolutely no control of her body, but that she felt Lacey tapping her. So she wasn't asleep. So Lacey is like, well, something weird happened to me last night too. And she starts telling her cousin what happened to her. But before she can even get the sentence finished, they start hearing footsteps all around them. I say all around them. It sounded like there was a group of people marching towards them from all directions. So Lacey is frozen in fear and her cousin are just sitting there not knowing what to do. And then her cousin looks at her and they both just jump up and they bolt out of there. And this is where it gets effing crazy. They're running until all of a sudden they have to stop because right in front of them is Lexi's friend who initially could not come with them, told them that she was not coming, and she's standing right in front of them smiling at them. All she says is, I'm sorry I'm late to the campsite, but I'm finally here. So Lacey turns to her cousin turns to her, and her cousin just shakes her head aggressively like she's terrified of her own friend. Lacey also said that there was something just uncanny about her and she couldn't put her finger on it, but suddenly she speaks again and she says, why are you guys running? And she takes a step closer to them. So Lexi and Lacey take a step back. And as soon as they do this, her friend's smile starts contorting. Like bending and waving as if someone was drawing a painting. Her voice got super high pitched. Like she almost couldn't even hear her speaking anymore. It was so high pitched. And then Lacey's ears start bleeding. And Lexi's friend just starts screaming like this crazy scream. And her face starts like contorting as if she's in pain. And she's screaming like she's in pain. And so Lacey and Lexi look at each other and just start running as fast as they can. As they're running, this is fucking crazy. So they can still hear the marching all around them. And she turns around and she sees Lexi's friend essentially on all twos because she's running with one arm and one leg and her face is cocked sideways. Her face is not even a face. She has multiple mouths, multiple ears, but the mouths and ears are on her face. She said it was the most unsettling thing she has ever seen. So Lacey and Lexi are running as fast as she said it was the fastest she's ever ran in her entire life, and they don't know where they're going. They have no devices on them whatsoever, and they're now lost in the forest. And they look around and the trees were like extending. She said that they were extending up from like 100 feet in the air, and she said that she would have noticed more details, but she was running for her life, so she doesn't know exactly what was going on there. So they continue to run, and they're running until finally she hears this like honking sound and then these bright lights, and she notices that it's a car. The car stopped inches in front of them. It slammed on their brakes. And as soon as this happened, they obviously stopped and they look around and that thing that was chasing them was gone. They both just collapsed on the floor crying. For all they knew, this stranger could have been someone who was going to kidnap them, and they just did not care at this point. It wasn't a kidnapper though. It was some sweet lady who had kids in the car, and she actually took them to her house so that they could call their parents. She said that they told the lady the story, and she just kind of looked at them like they were absolutely insane, and that their stuff is probably still out there somewhere in the woods because they did not go back to get that ever. She also said that this experience fundamentally made her leave that area. She actually moved away. And she said that she wants everybody to know, if you ever go to the Appalachian Mountains, if you see it, no you didn't. If you hear it, no you didn't. And if you feel it, no you didn't. Wasn't that story wild? I got that and I was reading it and I was like, what is going on here? That is crazy to me. The whole, her friend running on like two legs freaked me out. And having like the ears and the mouths on the face, I have trypophobia, and that just makes me think of that. And I cannot handle it. I cannot handle thinking about it. I would be so angry if I saw that just because of that. I don't know how scared I'd be at that point. I think I'd just be pissed that I had to look at that face. I would love to know what your thoughts, opinions, and comments are on this one. Please be respectful, but I want to hear what everyone thinks this was. Was this a mimic? Was this an SW? Like, what was this? Because I've never heard anything like this before. This is a first for me, and I read a lot of scary stories. And if anybody else has had an experience like this, you need to email me immediately, please, because this is crazy. I want more Appalachian stories for Halloween. I would like to do an Appalachian story every day until Halloween comes. So if you guys could send me them, that would be great, because that's what I want to do. I just don't have enough of them to do it, but that's what I want to do for the rest of October. And with that being said, drop all your thoughts, opinions, suggestions in the comments, please, but be respectful. And I am now going to do my favorite part, which is the shout outs. Angel Rain _213. You search me every day, and I love that so much. Thank you so much for doing that. My content wasn't hitting the FYP, or I don't know if it is or not, whatever, but I don't care, because I have my little community that I absolutely adore, and I love that you search me out. That means so much to me. Thank you so much for your unwavering support and for being kind in my comments. Thank you for being excited about my live. I'm so excited for you to be there, and just thank you so much for being kind and just being here for me. You have no idea how much you mean to me as an individual, as being a part of my community, and I hope you know that. I appreciate you. I love you, girl. Miss Banana 1107, you are so sweet. You said that I was part of your bedtime routine. I love that so much. I listen to scary stories every night, so to be someone else's scary story is so great. Like, it makes me feel so giddy. I love it so much. Thank you so much for supporting me. Thank you for commenting and telling me that. Thank you for being a part of my community. It means so much to me, and I'm running out of time right now, so I'm so